Welcome, everyone, to a very, very special episode of the Business Builders Podcast. We have both mine and Helena's original mentor, Mr. Jamil Damji. Jamil, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, super grateful to be here. Congratulations to both of you guys on your success, and what a fun story to be able to walk through and talk about with you guys. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Welcome, Jamil.
Very excited. So, Jamil, for anybody that is not really well adept into the wholesaling space, can you give our audience a brief overview of who Mr. Jamil Damji is?
Yeah, so I am the co-founder of a nationally franchised wholesale operation called Keyglee. We are in over 100 markets across the United States. We are one of the largest wholesaling operations in the entire country, if not the largest. I don't know. People go back and forth on, but who's bigger? I don't know. It don't matter to me. All I know is we do a bunch of deals, it's I've been doing this business model for over 20 years. I started when I was a young guy in my early 20s, before wholesaling was a thing, before the internet exploded with 1,000 different wholesaling mentorships and all this stuff. I was bootstrapping, figuring out how to put together deals and to do deals without needing any cash, any credit, or a real estate license. And it changed my entire life. And because I was able to do that, I've now had the joy of being able to mentor over 4,500 other individuals in the space of wholesaling, and grateful to have people like you and Helena that have come through the Astro community and have built incredible, thriving businesses, and to see the ripple effects of what you guys are doing in the community is super encouraging, and it really makes what I've done in my life mean something. So very, very neat.
So people know us, know our long-term goal for wholesaling is also to build a national franchise company, kind of like looking up to your path. So for people, the audience who don't know about wholesaling or how Astro Flipping wholesaling is different from other wholesaling, can you just give the audience like a high level overview? What is Astro Flipping? How is that different from other regular wholesaling?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Astro Flipping name comes from wholesaling without gravity, right? If you take the concept of gravity, what it does is it applies a resistant pressure or force on something that keeps it from going in the opposite direction. So for instance, right, what's keeping me in my chair right now and not allowing me to float into space? Well, it's gravity. Gravity's holding me down, right? It's an opposing force. And when you look at the business model of wholesaling, there's a lot of opposing forces. There's a lot of friction and a lot of ways that can keep you from doing deals abundantly, right? There can be resources. It could be people resources. It could be financial resources. It could be lack of knowledge. There's so many different things that can create resistance and friction and hold you back from doing an abundance of deals. Well, Astro Flipping in itself is removing that friction, removing that resistance, right? And so how do you remove the friction or the resistance of lack of resources for leads? Well, you got to find an abundant lead source, something that can be more relationship based, that can allow you to do business with them over and over and over again. Okay, cool. So that's our lead generation model, is one that is less friction, or has less resistance to it than other lead generation models, like, say, for instance, cold calling or texting homeowners. It's going to require you to have a large budget, right? Or pay per click, for instance, right? There's some people doing pay per click marketing for wholesale deals. Again, all of these things work. It's how much money do you have to spend on them to get them to work? And so I think that's what separates Astro Flipping from other approaches in wholesaling, is that we've looked at it in the perspective of how do we minimize or even remove the friction items, the things that keep success, that keep people resistant from success. And that's the piece that I think the Astro Flipping community and the Astro Flipping model brings to the table, that's very different from other wholesaling mentorships or other wholesaling trainers or coaches that differentiate me from them.
Yeah, and I think another big differentiator is also, you focus really heavily on mindset. And, I could say for me, like, mindset has been the biggest reason for my success and, where I'm at now. And I know Helena's big on mindset as well. So what would you say is the importance of mindset? And as you started in the beginning, did you have that same end vision that where you wanted to end up, or did that start to change year over year the more you learned?
So two great questions there, and I don't want to miss answering either. So I'll start with the first. With respect to mindset, right? For me, I just identified in myself where my problem was, right? And it was in how I was thinking, and I didn't even know I had a problem in how I was thinking and how I felt until I read and heard that there were people who felt and thought differently, right? And when I picked up and looked at the breadcrumbs of success, the people who were successful were thinking and feeling a lot different than I was thinking and feeling at the time when I was without success. And that for me was really telling, right? Because I'm like, man, it looks like all of the people who are doing super well in the world have this very common web of thought processes, and they have this very abundant, grateful, positive, emotional perspective on things, and it's a little like jarring when you first look at it. You're like, is the world, is this all BS? Are people this happy, this positive, this willing to be sharing and willing to give? Is this what it really is? Because I always heard it was different. I always heard that business was this like stab everybody, steal, take, hoard, keep, I win, you lose, right? That's what I had been told entrepreneurship and business was. And guess what? What I realized that I had been told entrepreneurship and business were from people who weren't entrepreneurs or business people. I was hearing about what it was from losers who didn't do anything, who were looking at the people who were doing things and wanted to explain why they got to where they got to. And their only explanation was, oh, they steal it. They've got to be bad people in order to get there. And that's when my eyes opened up. I was like, oh, I got it. It's a crabs in the bucket. I'm a crab. And everybody around me is a crab too. Oh, crap. All right. Well, I got to get out of this bucket. Right. And so you get these realizations, brother, that's just like, you come to terms with what you are and what like is around you. And then you if you don't want to be a crab anymore, I can't be in the same bucket with these guys any longer. I got to get out of here. And so I started to develop myself, and I realized that, a crab is literally just a way of thinking. It's just it's a perspective. If I can change my perspective, I can change my thought process, and I can change the way I feel, then I can actually change the things that I'm doing in the world. And if I change the things that I do in the world, I'm going to have different effects. I'm going to have because different causes will create different effects. And, there it was laid out in front of me. Now it was just about doing the work. And so why I think it's so important to do the work on the mind and on the spirit and on the insides is because you can see any situation from multiple perspectives. And that was another thing that I came to terms with, is that, looking at successful people, sometimes you're like, hey, there's a successful, woman or successful man, and they've got all these things. And then you go and talk to that person and you're like, so tell me about what it's like to be you. They're like, oh my God, it's so hard. I'm just, I want that. I want to try to do that thing, and I'm still stuck over here. And I was like, oh, wow. So it never ends either. So it's this perpetual hamster wheel of not feeling like you're good enough, not feeling like you're there yet. Okay. Got it. So the key here is to really, really be grateful for what you have, and to have an optimistic view of what you're wanting to accomplish and where you want to go. And that can get you to a place where there could be at least some satisfaction. And so the journey unfolded for me. Right. And so, because I didn't want to be like that person who was successful and unhappy, right? And I also didn't want to be like this person who was unsuccessful and unhappy, right? I want to be successful and happy, right? So there has to be a better way, and that was one of the reasons why I made mindset such a huge component of the community in what we do, because I don't want any of us to be successful and unhappy. I also don't want any of us to be unsuccessful and unhappy. So, so let's go down the other path. And
success and happy.
Successful and happy. Yeah. Right. And I think you can get that. I think we can all get that, but it requires, approaching this from a variety of perspectives and different modalities. And then I think the second question you asked, John,
was, did you have the same vision, like your end goal, that end vision each year, or did it change the more you learned?
No, it's always evolved. It's constantly evolved. Now, again, I have to say that when I started with the end in mind, right? So I started with the idea that I would have a wholesaling company that I would be able to sell one day. Okay. And so that was the goal. Nationally franchised wasn't the initial conversation. It wasn't the first thing. It was like, okay, maybe I build it so that we sell to a private equity firm, or maybe I build it so that we get venture capital money in here and we, grow it the way that OfferPad did or Open Door did. Whatever it was, I was looking at it from that perspective of how do I grow this thing into, something I can take an exit from. And so I started with the end in mind, but the end changed for sure. And it changed as I evolved and as the business went and as we grew and as we pivoted and, things didn't work and then some things did work. And so we doubled down on the things that did and we cut the things that didn't, and we kept moving. And so, no, I think that your goals are going to evolve. They're going to change. And if they don't, that means that you haven't changed. And if you're not changing in the process, then you're probably doing something wrong, right? You shouldn't want what if your 5-year goal right now is something, and if next year it's not a little different, then you haven't grown much.
100%. As you grow, your goals should grow. You should be able to, because you should be accomplishing, you should be growing 1% better every day, right? Or that's the goal, to grow 1% better every day. And then as you're growing, right, and it compounds, like wherever you are next year from now, you should be able to conceptualize and want to reach for things that are even further away, to keep growing your goals and keep getting that sense of like fulfillment and internal growth.
Right. And, your goal might be a Rolls Royce and a mansion in your first year, right? It could be. And then you might come to terms with like, man, I don't think I want any of those things. Because believe me, right? You get the Rolls Royce, you get a mansion, they're cool for a week.
Yeah. It's not fulfilling.
No, they mean nothing. I'm as happy in a Nissan as I am in a Rolls Royce, and I'm as happy in a 1-bedroom apartment as I am in a mansion. They don't change. They don't make me. And so, but my younger self had goals of material things, had goals of those items. And so I had to scratch the itch, right? But it was just an itch, it wasn't going to define my character or make me feel like I was more of a success because of them.
Yeah, so Jamil, if you can walk us through kind of your decision-making process throughout the past 10, 20 years, from initially you want to have an exit, either sell it or something, to decide it's going to be a franchise company. Like, why franchise? Why not, owning 10, 20, 50 corporate store? You have more control, maybe more cash flow. How did you guys come to that decision? And how will franchise help you to sell it to PE company, venture capital, whatever in the future?
Great questions. So how we came to the conclusion was through trial and error. Unfortunately, I wish I could say it was because we're super smart, but it wasn't. No, we tried to open up multiple corporate stores, and we saw that was very difficult to maintain. It was very expensive also, like very expensive. And then also we were opening corporate stores that were decentralized. So if the management's all in Phoenix, and now we're opening up a corporate store in Vegas, and now we have another satellite manager out there, and they're disconnected from the hub or the nucleus of what's going on in Phoenix, they're going to be very different in the corporate store over there in Las Vegas or wherever it is. And so we tried that. We opened up a store in Las Vegas, and we got our butts handed to us. We lost substantial amounts of money. It was a complete failure. And we learned that it was managing that and creating the same magic that we have in our Phoenix operation and another operation was going to be difficult remote. And so that was one of the things that we realized was difficult, was replicating the magic, right? Over and over and over again. The second thing that we realized that was difficult is the costs, right? Like opening up a corporate store means you got to have overhead. You're going to need to have another office space. You're going to need to have another general manager. I'm going to need to staff it. I'm going to need to, spend all the money on the signage. I got to do all these things. And it's a massive outlay and expense. And so that also became a limiting factor on how fast we could grow, right? Because I can't now open up 100 corporate stores in a year, right? Because I would be broke in a matter of weeks. I would have spent the money and I wouldn't have enough wherewithal to be able to keep it all going. And so that becomes problematic. And so we wanted to see how could we grow the business, and how could we use our magic and share our magic with other operations, but do it in a way where we're not financially responsible for that to happen, where we can give the processes, we can give the tools, we can give all of the strategies, we can give all of the things that make us successful to somebody else, but they can use their capital instead of our capital to invest in starting up the company. And that's what led us to the franchise model.
Got it. So, with now, because I know you guys have like physical office in each corporate store, and but for a company, for example, like ours, everything is remote. We don't have like a physical office. Everybody's scattered nationwide. Do you think that will still be a holdback factor for having a large scale of corporate stores nationwide?
I think at some point you guys will likely need a headquarters. I think the you growing. And just from a professional standpoint, people will need to know that there's like a place that they can go if they need something. I don't think it's necessarily important right now for you guys, as you guys are just in the infancy stages of growing, even though you're doing really well and you've done very well. I think that when you guys do make that final leap into franchising, you will need to have a centralized place where people can come for training, where you're housing information that is being disseminated to your other franchises, where you have your centralized management, where you have accounting, because there's massive amounts of accounting that are involved in franchising. And so you will definitely need a location at that time. Right now, I don't think it's super important for you, but you'll get there.
Got it. Cool. Because for us, we of course also have an end in mind, and also longer term, we're looking to build a private equity company and do business acquisition. So, like, we are very interested in buying and selling businesses itself, and each industry, each category kind of have their own unique nature of the business, different exit multiple because of the nature of the business. Curious, for a company like a wholesale company, which is not super common to be sold or be bought by another company, what do you see as like a common industry standard exit multiple, and what kind of wholesaling company is more favored by the institutional investor?
Well, the franchise model for sure, because we've looked at that as well, and there's not a lot of evidence that a wholesale company is even sellable. Eric Klein, right, I heard recently, is the first one that I know of that actually sold a wholesaling company. And I don't know the numbers of it, so I can't speak to that. Hopefully he did really well. But whatever that multiple was, and I would imagine somewhere probably 3 to 5x if I'm just using my own knowledge base here, I think it'd probably be somewhere 3 to 5x EBITDA, and which is pretty standard for a company in selling it when it's being sold. But when you're talking about a franchise model, where now it's the royalties, right? And royalties are just gravy. From what I've heard from previous comparable sales, is that you're somewhere between the 10 to 12x multiple for a franchise versus the other kind of operation. So a franchise model is extremely valuable in that regard when it comes to multiples.
That's golden. Why do you think is that? Besides the royalty, you have your branding, maybe it's more scalable. Any other factors come into play?
I think the things that you just mentioned, also because it's more systems and process based than it is like, I have these brick and mortar stores, and I have all this risk and liability. I think when you're in a franchise model, you really minimize and you spread that risk out, and that's what makes it very, very, very attractive to private equity firms to come in and want to acquire those.
Look, curious, why did you guys have 3 corporate locations, right?
We have 3 corporate stores. They're all centralized out of Phoenix.
Okay, got it. Was there a reason why number 3? Did you know that was like the sweet spot, or did you just happen to have 3 and then decide to franchise at that point?
No, our corporate stores actually came after a franchise. So
Oh, really?
we started Phoenix, and then we had, well, that actually there's some blur lines there. We started Phoenix, we started Vegas, we failed in Vegas. We then pulled that back. We opened Florida from Phoenix because we tried to do Vegas in Vegas. We opened Florida. Florida started doing really well, and we were centralized from Phoenix. And then that's when we saw, we can do this remotely, right? Like we don't need to be in Florida to do deals in Florida. And then we actually opened up Atlanta, and Atlanta was doing really well. And then we're like, okay, wait, this is working. We had Florida, we had Georgia, we had Texas. I think Texas may have happened after we started franchising. I'm a little blurry on the timelines there, but I know Florida opened before franchise, and Georgia, which we ultimately closed and folded into the franchise location because it was a confusing market for us to be in alongside our franchise, and we didn't want to create unnecessary competition for that franchise either. And so we actually just kind of stepped back and let the franchise take over and do their thing there. But yeah, that's kind of how that all played out. It wasn't like a sweet spot for us. It was those were markets that we were doing well in, and but we were not interested in opening more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, for like the corporate locations or anything like you're directly managing, right? You obviously have a lot to manage there. But then when it comes to like the franchisees, how do you like maintain quality control, make sure that the franchisees are, doing well, making sure that they're set up for success correctly, and that you guys do like monthly check-ins or quarterly?
There's weekly check-ins actually. There's constant communication between our franchises and their franchise director. There's a dashboard. We're connected to their numbers. We can see what they're doing for outreach. We can see, their activity levels. And if things aren't looking like there's any action or activity going on, our team reaches out, right? It says, what's happening here? Or if it's specific to a specific rep, like we can see everything from the dashboard. And so that allows us to really manage expectations and manage success, because you and I both know that if you don't do the work, you're not going to make any money, right? And so you have to do specific amounts of tasks. You got to have a certain number of conversations. You got to have a certain, follow-up cadence. You got to do things in order for things to happen, right? That's just the reality of the world, right? We do live in a physical world in that regard. And so we can monitor that to make sure that there's action and activity. Now, with respect to quality control, we do a lot of training, right? So when a franchise first opens up, they come to Phoenix and they spend 2-3 weeks with us, where they're really indoctrinated into the foundations of what Keyglee is and what makes Keyglee special and different. And we do and offer refreshers on that constantly, so that the culture of the Keyglee brand maintains across the different franchise locations. Now, with respect to operations, every market's going to be slightly different. And so it would be oppressive of us to expect that every market's going to operate the same way we operate ours, because there is nuance market to market, and you have to be flexible. You have to be open to allow for interpretation and for market nuance to dictate a little bit of what the operational strategy is in a specific area. And so that has made, standardization be a little bit less stringent than the McDonald's, for instance, right? Like, but even then, if you've ever had McDonald's in Europe, it's not the same as McDonald's in the United States. There's some differences there. It tastes a little different. The patty's a little different. The fries are a little different. The salt's a little different. So even though, and they even have a few different names. You know what I mean? A Big Mac's not made out of a hamburger in India, right?
What is
so
it?
there's I don't. Well, they don't eat beef there, right? So it's got cultural nuances and things that are different about it, and so you can't have standardization get become oppressive to the nature of the business. And so with respect to quality, I think that comes from the culture of what we put out as to what the Keyglee brand means and what it is to be a part of the family. But then we allow for the nuance of every individual market to make it unique. And so every franchise is going to operate a little different. And I think that's actually something we celebrate instead of look at as like a lack of quality in that respect. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just going to ask. So basically you provide them like help them track numbers, review performance. That's like a franchisee success advisor type of role you have in your corporate store. Like how long do you hold their hands for doing so? And
that support is always there.
Okay. So for forever. Okay. That's good. And let's say with the market shifting and all that, do you do like market research, provide them with data where they are kind of doing their own research based off of your guidance? And in terms of aligning the culture part, you want them to do the right thing to keep the reputation of Keyglee brand. So in the initial filtration stage for selecting who is qualified to be a franchisee owner, what does that process look like? And how do you do that part, aligning the culture remotely, constantly going forward?
Great questions, Helena. So, there's a huge vetting process in franchise sales. There's a period where we have conversations with them to kind of understand where they are, what their financial capacities are, what their goals are, whether or not we're even a fit. Then there is the exploration process. So this is where we're exploring who they are. We're doing background checks and checking on who they are as individuals, and they're looking at our FDD and having their attorneys and their accountants take a look at our financials and what we have ongoing to make sure that excuse me, we're the right fit for them. And then once that all happens, there's that 14-day cooling off period where they say yes, we're ready to go. And then they need to spend another 2 weeks and decide and really want to do it.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So they say yes. Okay. All right, cool. So we'll talk in 2 weeks. See how you feel then. Right. So there is a lot of opportunity to backtrack, to reconsider, to find something else. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong in a franchise sale, right? Or in that happening. And so, but I think it's really good. I think it's for the protection of us and the franchisee, because I also don't want somebody who's like, oh my God, I seen this guy on TV. Oh my God, I want to be in business with him. Oh, I'm going to buy a franchise. And they're like just super, super ready to do it. And then they actually don't, they're like a really terrible culture fit, Right. And so that's happened. We've had people, and we have what's called a discovery day where people come in and we get to discover more about them and they discover about us. And we've had people we've turned away after discovery day to say, it's not going to work.
Yeah. You especially make sure people they're buying in emotionally before they buy in. Monetarily. Yeah.
And a franchise purchase is not an emotional purchase. It needs to be one that's really, really, really thought out. Right. And so we're very mindful of that. And we don't, it's not legal anyways. You can't the way that it's set up is to give everybody that time to really consider if this is the right thing for them. Now, because they come out for Discovery Day and they come to see the culture, we can get an understanding of whether or not they're going to fit in with us, and if they feel like they're going to be able to fit in with what we got going on, and if we feel like they're, vice versa, it's gonna be a fit. That kind of happens in that time when we're exploring and asking questions of each other. And so it's a pretty involved, lengthy process of learning both, the Keyglee side and us on the operator side, and then we make a final decision as to whether or not this is something we want to do.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So I guess one more question on that one is, so how do you help your franchise companies scale? Like, do they always want to, scale as big as possible, or how do you help them? And another question on that in terms of the exit is, if you have multiple franchise, when you exit, sell it, are you going to roll up all the franchise, or are you just going to sell the branding, the parent companies? And I just don't know, how do you handle the franchise relationship with the new buyer of the company?
I mean, we haven't gotten to that stage yet. From what I've seen in the past, when franchise companies do exit or do sell, they don't get rolled up. So, like, for instance, Homevestors has been sold multiple times, and every Homevestor franchise still operates independently and is their own thing. And so that would be the way that we would want to align our sale process, because rolling it all up into one would make no sense. Everybody's operating independently of each other, and every market's different as well. In regards to scaling, again, just as you had mentioned, every operator has a different appetite and capacity and goals, right? And so, of course, our goal is for everybody to grow to the largest they want to grow to, but there's just some operators that are happy with, making X number of dollars a month and being able to keep, their family fed, and to be able to go on nice vacations, and they're not really interested in 10xing that. And it's not our responsibility, nor is it our desire to want to push them out of that. If that's where they're happy, great. That's why you have multiple franchises in different areas, because everybody has their own goals, right? Ours is growth, right? But not every franchise is going to be growth. And some of them are just going to be, getting things operational and then maintenance. So it really is just dependent on that whole operator's vision for what they're seeing. Now, in terms of how we help them, it's just through the same resources that we use to grow and scale our own teams, right? We offer hiring assistance, we offer training assistance, we offer assistance in the different types of lead strategies, and how we're continuing to maintain our lead funnels and our buyer funnels and whatnot. And so everything that we're doing that's cutting edge at the corporate level is what we're implementing on a franchise level. So that is part of how we continue to maintain supporting the franchises into their growth into the future.
Mm-hmm. So we expand into new market. Like, what are some factors coming into play in terms of market research to help you decide if that's the market you guys want to get into? And let's say if you got into it, like you mentioned, Georgia market, like what are some factors coming into play at that point, like the expense, return, etc., to help you decide if you want to keep that franchise, or it's just not worth the return, the expenses?
Well, we don't look at franchises from the perspective of, do we want to keep them or not, right? It's
that question is.
But for corporate stores, right? For corporate stores, for us, there's so many factors in there. It's never a cut and dry, like, oh, it's got this, checks this box, it checks this box, it checks this box, it's good. There could be, I think some of the ones that are pretty consistent is, just the size of the market, population density, and the investor activity that's out there. Also access to capital, right? Is it a market where there's a lot of capital flowing in there? There's a lot of investment opportunity. There's a lot of fix and flip activity going on out there. Are there a lot of buy and hold investors out there? Is it a landlord friendly market? That doesn't mean we have very thriving franchises in California, so it doesn't need to be a landlord friendly market for it to be a good franchise market. But we're looking at all the factors, right? I think just where we stay away from, is low density, rural areas. We stay away from anything that doesn't have a tremendous amount or a high volume of investor activity. So like heat maps, really understanding heat maps and like where there's a lot of cash purchases, that's going to be what drives us to feel like a franchise or a corporate store is going to be successful there.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So I want to talk more about like the marketing and about you, Jamel, and then John, you can dive more deeper into the sales team and the structure, different layers, etc.
Yeah, I want to definitely talk about that messy middle time period as well.
You can ask now if you want to.
Okay, cool. So like before you started having all these franchises, right, and the corporate locations, you, Josiah, Hunter, and Rahima were, basically just the four musketeers at that point, building up the company. And there's always a point when you're building the company and starting to scale, you hit that like messy middle area where, you have the systems, you have some sort of systems in place, and you're operating and trying to refine those. And then you're also delegating and wearing a lot of the hats. So how did you kind of get past that messy middle, and what helped you figure out like, all right, these are the key areas we each need to focus on in order to move the needle forward and scale that company and kind of 10x instead of just moving through the day-to-day and doubling output?
I think the messy middle for us was too many corporate stores, right? That's where there was a time where, and I can't even remember all the different markets we were in, but I think we had something like 12, 15 corporate stores that
wow.
we were trying to manage. Yeah, it was ridiculous, dude. And it was, we had a C-suite executive that had joined the operation that came from the world of franchise and had this very ambitious plan. And half of us he made this great presentation, but half of us looked at it and were like, this is absolutely asinine. And the other half of us were like, yeah, this is great, and so, it was one of those moments. It was a pivotal moment of like where I think we probably should have had a real we should have had a moment where we saw that there were like half the company doesn't want to do this. The other half of the founders do want to do this, and we really should have gone through the foundational reasons as to why the half who didn't want to do it. Ultimately, it didn't work, and it was a tremendous waste of money, a massive strain on resources, and like very, 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 very poorly executed. And so, that was one of those things that, hate to say I told you so, right? Like those are the moments, but like and everything that the half that had not wanted to do it thought was going to happen ended up happening. Right. And so, I think the things that we learned there was probably just have better communication, and really like if you're in a spot where half the founders are like, nah, this is probably not a good idea. You should take heed. You should like listen to those moments, because even though things are always like, there's times when things look so good, right? If you look back at like 2022, the early part of 2022, when you could wholesale a ham sandwich, that was a great time to go bankrupt because of like overextending yourself and getting into markets that were probably not the best, and being speculative and making mistakes and all of the things that happen when there's no rationality in a market, right? And so that I would say that was probably the messiest part of our middle, and I think really grateful that we were able to overcome that.
Got it. So you guys kind of scaled too fast and then deployed some capital into basically a 50-50 decision that could really change the trajectory of the business.
Yeah, and it was just like scaling too quickly, no matter what. Anybody will tell you that, and we knew better and still allowed ourselves to kind of get taken into down the line of reasoning that wasn't the best for us. But it's okay. We survived it, and we learned, and we would never make that mistake again. But scaling too fast is like one of the fastest ways to kill a good thing.
Right. And for people like listening, because everybody hears, I think, scaling too fast, right? But like, at least to me, scaling too fast means like bringing on a lot of capital outlay, especially people, without having the right systems in place, and also taking on different avenues of the business without having like a proven foundation from yourself doing it. What would you say your definition of like scaling too quickly is, if you could give it like a generalized type of definition?
I think it's just like really, really understanding resources, both manpower and capital, and not being dependent on the scale to produce in order for you to maintain it. Because like if you look at the companies that are doing really great with scaling fast and capturing market share, they all lose money. Like those companies are losing money for a decade before they actually turn profitable, right? And so unless you have enough capital to just not care about profitability, then sure, scale fast. Go ahead and gobble up as much market share as possible. But if you're not in that case, if you don't have an unlimited tap of money that's just going to keep getting thrown into your company to continue scale, to capture market share, then no, you need to scale very systematically, very, 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 very thoughtfully. And I would take baby steps. You know, the tortoise wins the race, and people just want to be the hare all the time.
Yeah. Lots of people have like a goal of scaling to 10 locations, and they scaled so fast for the first 3, they never had a solid foundation and they can never get to 10. But some other people, they are willing to take step by step. They scale 1, 2, 3. They cannot only get to 10, but also get to 100 later on.
Yeah,
So
and it just takes longer. The biggest problem is time. Time is what's creating all of the failure there, because if you were just more patient, if you could just say, I'm willing for this to take 10 years instead of 2, or I'm willing for this to take 20 years instead of 5, right? If you have that same approach that we have as entrepreneurs, in, you know, when we get our first taste of success, it's from a delayed gratification typically, right? We have to do all this work before we get success. Well, the same has to be said in terms of that on a macro level, right? On a macro level, when you're wanting to scale, you got to have the same kind of attitude, delayed gratification. I got to be able to see how the things that I'm doing right now are going to pay off in a while, but I can't expect them to have to be able to pay off right now. And if growing my company means I need to be able to make my payoffs happen right away, you're not ready to scale.
Yeah. It's more like people have unrealistic goal. We just have unrealistic timeline expectation. Goal cannot just want it too fast.
Yeah, and they get like some success in wholesaling, and then they want to start trying to like flip homes or lend money, and they do try to do all different avenues, and they lose focus on the main thing until it's delegated out, and then next thing you know, they're all over the place.
Yep.
And that's what I like about Astro Flipping. Like 2 things that I really, really like the most about Astro Flipping. One is every Sunday you have the mindset call with us. And that was like non-negotiable for me to attend every single one. Because I was not like a super spiritual or mindset oriented person. And you taught me a lot to be mindful, be aware of my each move and my feelings and all that. And even like self-confidence, all that coming from you, Jamil. So super grateful for you for that.
Of course. Great to see where you've gone, you know, and where you'll go. It's incredible.
Thank you. And the second part is the focus, because every single student in Astro community, we are doing one thing and one thing only, which is to wholesale, cash deals. No big set flip, no creative, no this and no that. And because we're so focused, I think Astro Flipping, we have like the highest success ratio compared to other similar mentorships. And also because we're all doing one thing, it allows us to collaborate a lot easier. Because if one person is doing wholesaling and another doing fix and flip, another doing this and that, like it's hard for us to all come together and utilize the common resources. So that's how I did my first few deals, which is to lay in the community, the people who are doing the same thing, maybe 2 steps ahead of us, and just learn from them. And people are all coming here willing to help each other grow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a very real thing. And, you know, I know it's not the sexiest approach, right? Because it's like we all would love to be like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to land, I want to build skyscrapers, I want to fly airplanes, I want to have a hot air balloon. I mean, sure, right? Sure, I want to do all those things too. I'd love to open up a llama farm,
Goat yoga.
but the reality is I'm a wholesaler, and that's what I know how
Right.
to do, right? And so, and nothing against the llama farms out there, but I do feel like focus is very important.
For sure. And for you, I know like now you are the face of the Keyglee company. You are doing all the marketing, all the YouTube videos is you. But initially, back in the room, like yourself, you were like doing all the underwriting, right? Comping 100 properties per day. You were the best acquisition person. I think you are definitely a good fit for that, but you are also even a better fit for now being the face of the company, connecting with mass public, and then convey the mindset thing to your student. So how did you transition from that to your current role? And I also remember you were like on a vacation, which you were forced to step out of the day in and day out of the business. And when you came back, you were surprised. Everything was running even better when compared to when you were there. So was that kind of like a pivoting moment, making you realize, okay, my team are independent enough, and now I can utilize my unique skill set of other things to grow the business at a higher level?
Yeah, it's exactly how it went down, right? So once I freed myself up of my time, because before that vacation, I was, stuck in that room comping houses all day. It was just what it was. That was the reality of my day. I'd be in there and I'd just sit there and I would literally comp 200 houses a day, sometimes more. And that would be like crazy. Imagine how long you'd be sitting there if how quickly you have to be doing each house. Like it was nonsense, right? It was a lot of work, but it was like, of course, it's why I'm really good at what I do. But once I saw and realized that others could do it too, I wasn't just the only one,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a part of the entrepreneurial journey that we all have to come to terms with, is that like, you're not special. Everyone is,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And
And,
you got
and,
to find
and
that in other people.
yeah, and you got to be able to find that in other people and pull it out of them so that they can grow and thrive, and then that can free you up to do things that are new challenges for yourself. And that's what being the face of it was for me, because I had to see in others what I saw in myself, and then I had to champion that for them so that they felt like they could sit in that seat. And then once they were firmly in that seat, I was like, well, where do I sit?
Like,
Because I just gave my seat away.
Mm-hmm.
and so you find a new seat, right? And so for me, becoming the face was, it kind of just, it happened on accident, really, because I was already in the world networking and putting myself out there. When COVID happened, there was just the opportunity, right? I was home and I had my phone and I was bored and I had all this knowledge, and so I just started talking, and away we went.
I
yeah,
love
but that
that.
became a commitment you to people, especially to your student. Like every Tuesday and Sunday call, the call lasts for 5, 6 hours. I know sometimes you're exhausted from the whole day activities, but that is your commitment from initial passion, interest here and there to consistency and commitment you show your students. That's how you get success, which is showing up for you and people around you every single day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I pride myself on consistency. That's probably my one thing that I can say that I'm really, really, really grateful for, have a natural consistency in me. I've been consistent since I was young, consistent at whatever I did. Right. And I'm happy for that.
I
Yeah.
mean, you showed up to the mastermind in a neck brace, so like,
Uh, yeah. That's wild.
so
Lesson for
crazy.
us, we should take that trip sometime to test our team too.
I Let's do it. All
Okay.
right. So Jamil, we're getting towards the end. Obviously, there's always a million questions, but we'll just catch you on Tuesday calls for the rest of them. So we ask these same three questions to everybody that comes on. So I'll fire away with the first one, and then Helena will hit you back with a second. The first one is, what are you doing consistently to maintain that positive mindset, to make sure that you're practicing some sort of mindfulness or working on the mind each day?
Yeah. So daily breath work and meditation. It's non-negotiable for me. I'll do a 20, 30-minute breath work session every single day. Then that'll lead into a 30-minute to an hour-long meditation every day. And if I don't do it, man, I'm like, and there's some days where, in a year, I might miss 3 or 4 days, and I feel them.
Good.
I really can tell the difference between the day, like that day, and all the other days that I had. Right. So it's like I don't even need to feel like it, because I know it's like, oh, here it's like, if you don't brush your teeth,
Yeah,
you're gonna have a stinky mouth all day long.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
well, it's like that. Like, I know if I don't do this, that I'm literally walking around all day with like an unbrushed mouth, right? Like, that's what it feels like to me. And my attitude, everything about me is different. So, yeah, that's, and it's tangible. I can feel the result of it immediately.
Yeah, it's like if I miss my morning routine or I wake up a little later than I wanted to and I have to rush it, like it definitely doesn't translate well to the rest of my day.
No.
Yeah. So the second question we asked is, a lot of entrepreneurs, when they are so in the weeds and the thick of the business, they put their heads down. They sometimes tend to forget about personal growth and personal development and just focus on like the hectic day to day. And sometimes they maybe lose sight of the upcoming opportunities in front of them. So how do you constantly, equip yourself with cutting edge knowledge, or knowing the right opportunities to capitalize on?
Well, I don't know that I'm the best at this, because I am the kind of person that keeps my head down and does the thing that I do, right? And I don't like getting distracted by too much.
Same.
I'm really not worried about missing out on this opportunity or that. I don't really give a crap what this person has to say or that person has to say, or what this person's doing, or what Cody Sanchez wants to, worry about, or Andy Elliott's doing right now, or Pace for that matter. I love him, but everybody's got their own thing going on. I'm doing me. I do the thing that works for me in my world and in my life, and I just consistently do it. And it makes no difference to me what anyone else is doing that's cutting edge or different, because if I'm still successful in the thing that I'm doing right now, then it's still working. And if I'm not, then I know I got to look up and outside and maybe look around me and see where I might have missed the boat on something, or I need to catch another boat or catch another wave. But I'm not worried about it. I don't get FOMO.
Got it. Do you think
What are you doing?
Go
Like, what are you
ahead.
doing to stay on top? Like in your industry, like what are you doing daily to kind of like maintain that like education and stay on top of the industry that you're in?
It's curiosity for me at this point, right? So I've been working with new acquisition strategies and new exit strategies that I've been curious about, and the curiosity is what leads me to new investment strategies and new things to do, right? Like I got curious about tax liens and tax deeds, and so I went and learned all about them. And now they're becoming like a really, really interesting strategy that I'm using in my business, and they're highly lucrative. And so you haven't heard me talk about them yet, because I'm still compiling all of the content that I'm creating on it. But you'll hear a lot from me in the next year on tax deeds and tax liens as means to get new wholesale opportunities and deals. And imagine not having to talk to any real estate agents, not having to talk to anybody to get a deal. Imagine if you could just go on a website, do some underwriting and put a bid out there and get a deal, right? Like that's what I can do on a tax deed that I didn't realize I can do. And it's one of those strategies that it's not cutting edge. It's not new. It's so old school that the people who do it didn't want to share with anybody what they were doing. So they've kept it secret.
Yeah, that's actually my question intention, which is how do you not just keep doing that one thing and one thing only, but also like look around other related sites to grow your business? That's what
just curiosity.
Professionally. Yeah.
So I got curious about tax liens and tax deeds because I saw someone sell me a house. I paid $200,000 for it. I bought it off this guy for $200,000. I seen he paid $6,000.
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
Wow.
I said, I asked him, I'm like, dude, are you going to go to prison?
Was this
And he's
legal?
like, yeah. He's like, why? I'm like, how did you buy this house for $6,000? He's like, oh, I bought a tax lien. I'm like, what? He's like, I bought a tax lien. I said, and then I foreclosed, and then I got the house for $6,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have blown
And
my mind too.
it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it, right? And so I'm like, how do I not know about this? And so that led me down a path, right? And then also my exit strategies, right? Like I was wholesaling everything, but now with my co-living exits, I'm not wholesaling everything now. I'm keeping a bunch of things, but I'm keeping them strategically because I can recycle the same money over and over and over again on these co-living houses, and they're cash flowing massive returns for me. So it's curiosity. Yeah, it's curiosity, it's necessity. Like I needed to start buying real estate to mitigate my tax implication from my wholesale business. So there was all these things that were pushing me to it. But yeah, it's like curiosity and necessity a lot of times, but I'm not out there just being like, show me the next thing. I need to know the next thing. I'm actually not that guy at all.
Mm-hmm.
Just like open your eyes, pay attention to opportunities. When you come across them, capitalize on them appropriately. And I'm personally super interested in that tax lien, strategy as well. I know it works better for certain states compared to other states, like in Florida and Alabama. Maybe it doesn't work that well because of how it works. But yeah,
no, that's actually not true at all. I got tax. Yeah, I got tax deeds in Florida that I bought on a Monday and I wholesaled on a Friday. I sent one of the deals to John. I was able to exit out of that deal and made $6,000 on it, and I got it done in under a week. It was great.
That's amazing. So super looking forward to more education content coming out.
Yeah, can't wait for the tax deed YouTube challenge.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah.
Last question.
It'll be the most boring one because it's like, oh, here's how you do real estate without having to talk to anybody.
It's just gonna be your screen mirroring and you're just clicking buttons.
Yeah, it'll be like TTN, talk to no one.
I love that. So the last one is, what is one piece of advice that you would like to give to like aspiring entrepreneurs or anybody that is starting to build their business or isn't stuck in that messy middle type of thing that you wish you knew when you were starting yours?
You're exactly where you're supposed to be. That's it. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Quit thinking it's supposed to be something else. You didn't make the other decision. You didn't do the thing. You're where you are because you are where you are, right? You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And the faster you get to come to terms with that, the less time you're going to be wasting thinking what if.
Yeah,
that's
really good.
Well, Jamil, it's been a pleasure having you on. Hopefully we could have you back on again in a later episode, but is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with, anything you want to promote or you want anybody to know about?
Yeah, I think you guys are all awesome. Keep listening to podcasts like this, keep betting on yourself. You're the only one who's going to, maybe your mom. So
you can always count on mom.
Yeah, keep betting on yourself, and you'll get there. That's it. It's that. I think there's something fundamentally special about the action of like taking a leap of faith on you, and I think that's what makes God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, support you in that. Is that leap we take, and when we take that leap off the edge, and we don't know who's going to catch us. And we do figure out finally what it is that does catch us. And when you realize that you're supported by like the infrastructure of this entire universe or God, you're supported by God, then how could you go wrong?
Got to take that faith jump, right? How can people reach out to you or do deals with your company?
You can reach out to me on Instagram. It's at @JDamji, @JDAMJI, or subscribe to my YouTube channel, Jamil Damji, or youtube.com/Jamil Damji. I give away free content there all the time. You can DM me directly on IG if you have a deal. And I'd love to hear from you.
definitely go
Appreciate
check it
it.
out. There are lots of good in that because that's my early education starting from there. YouTube University.
That's it.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Jamil, for coming on.
course.
Really appreciate it.
Take care,
guys.
everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care.